Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our tactical breakdown series, our show in which we look at the players that Arsenal have been linked to in an analytical and statistical way, with the help of some experts, be that from journalists, be that from fans, be that from people that are just simply in the know about these players, to provide you with all of the expert insight feasible so you can be educated upon who these players are and get pretty much up to scratch and be the jealousy of your friends knowing everything about each and every single one of those Arsenal transfer targets. We're doing this for every single player that Arsenal get linked to throughout the summer. Yes, that's a lot of work. So we'd appreciate if you could drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We also do an 8 a.m. show every single day, updating you for all of the latest transfer news, which obviously leads in to many of these shows. We're going to have them coming out every single day and more following on from that. And we also, on the channel, love to get insight from you guys in the chat box. We always make sure that there is lots of fan interaction going on, so we're going to be doing that towards the end of the show. In fact, let me show you what is going to be on the agenda for today as we talk about Max Aarons, or Aarons I should say, from Norwich City. Is one thing you're going to learn about how to pronounce his name properly today. Of course, the Norwich City right back helped them get promotion back up to the Premier League this season, and we're going to kick off the show with our expert insight, which comes from Joe from the Canary Cast, which is a specific Norwich City podcast. You can check out all of their stuff. They have loads of kind of specific videos on players like Aarons. Of course, Emi Buendia is featured heavily too. And we spoke to Joe back in January when Arsenal were linked with Emi Buendia. So he's been absolute quality for us once again. So without further ado, let's kick off with that.
Here from Canary Cast, Norwich City podcast that you can check out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the places you normally get your podcast. But yeah, I've been asked by Tom to do a little lowdown on Max Aarons for you, so let's crack straight on. I've already made a mistake. It's not Max Aarons. I've spent 2.5 years calling him Max Aarons for him to come out and say it's Max Aarons. So that's from the horse's mouth. It is Max Aarons. Okay, I suppose we'll start with, have you got any chance of signing him? Yeah, you probably have. Last summer he was told he could leave. For whatever reason, that didn't come to fruition, whether Norwich didn't receive a good enough bid or Max didn't fancy the clubs that came in for him. I don't know, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. He stayed this season and helped us get back up to the Championship. A lot of big clubs circling around him. We had a bid from Roma in January. Whatever reason, the club didn't like it or Max didn't fancy it. We've had a loan bid from Barcelona, loan to buy, which we obviously rejected. Why would we accept that? Arsenal, Spurs, West Ham and Everton in recent weeks. Both Manchester clubs have been linked with him in the past, not too distant past either. He's hot property, Max Aarons. His 21-year-old right back is very, very good for my money. In fact, let's talk about what sort of player he is. He's quick. He's not lightning quick, but he's quick enough for a Premier League right back. He'll be absolutely fine in that regard. Good passer, pass completion stats are good. He's created 63 chances from right back this season, which is the second most in our team behind Emi Buendia. Gives you a taste of how good that right hand side of our team is. But yeah, he's very, very adept at going forward. He's also good defensively. The main thing is he's incredibly consistent. He's perhaps the most consistent Norwich player I've seen in a Norwich shirt for a while. He's a 7 out of 10 most weeks at least. The mistakes he's made, I could probably count on one hand. In 3 seasons, there was a mistake against Forest, and he backed off Dale Lefeu against Watford in the Premier League and allowed him to get the cross in. Other than that, I'm struggling to think of any mistakes, and this is a lad that made his debut at 18 against Ipswich. Just took it in his stride, didn't bother him. It's obviously a massive game in this part of the world. Just slotted straight in there and looked class. Next week, same. Week after that, exactly the same. It doesn't matter whether he's playing Ipswich, an under-23 game, or away at Anfield. He's so consistent. He just gets on with it. Nothing seems to faze him. He's got a great mentality. He's not I wouldn't say he's arrogant, but he's sort of, I don't know if cocky is even the right word, but he's got enough about him, you know. You need a bit of that to hold your own, and he's definitely got that. He knows his career's going that way, and yeah, you would back him to fancy himself at any sort of setup. I don't even know if an England cap would phase him. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously he'd be delighted to get it, but He'd probably just take that in his stride as well. He's so consistent. His role in our team is quite interesting. Our wing backs do provide the width, but they're not necessarily that wide. They're asked to cut in quite a bit because obviously if you're crossing to Pookie against 2 or 3 big centre halves, that's not going to go so well. So we're quite happy to cut in and recycle possession around the penalty area and that sort of thing. He will cut in and have a shot on his left foot, although I would say he needs to work on that and hone that skill. They're not all on target, probably about 50-50, I'd say. Some go over the bar, some go wide, some hit the target, but there's definitely a threat there that he can work on cutting inside on his left foot. Be interesting if he played in a team where he was asked to get to the byline and cross it more to a target man or something like that. I think that would probably benefit his game because he's definitely got the pace to do it, and he's not bad at crossing. He's certainly not, and it's definitely got better. But because he's not asked to do that much of it, perhaps it needs some work, certainly at Premier League level. Other than that, the only real weakness, and it would never put me off signing him for any club, like he's brilliant. He is only 5'8", and he will get targeted at the far post by, the striker will drift across and get on the end of a cross at the far post up against Aaron's. He's had a lot of protection against that with Hanley and Ben Gibson this season, and we're obviously aware of it as a defensive unit. And it hasn't really cost us, but the potential is there for it to cost you. If a big target man drifts onto Aaron's and wins the header, like he's at a disadvantage. But like I say, that is by no means a reason not to sign him. This lad is class, and to be honest, I know the right back England spot is busy. You've got Trent in there. I mean, Carl Walker's still knocking about. Reece James, good players, but I think in 2 or 3 seasons, I don't see any reason why Max can't push them for a starting spot, at least be in the squad 100%. He is that good. Let's talk about price, because I don't really think our sporting director, Stuart Webber, will entertain any sort of conversation unless at least £30 million base price is put on the table. It is going to require a club record fee for us to get him out of this Norwich squad. I would like to see add-ons after that as well for potential England performances or, European appearances, stuff like that. The potential is definitely there for us to make an awful lot of money on this deal, and Stuart Webber will make sure that we do that. You can't come to Norwich and offer him 15 million quid for Max Aarons. You will be told in no uncertain circumstances to do one, unless you have that 30-odd million pound on the table. He's a harsh negotiator, Stuart Webber, but in this situation, he's well within his rights to do that with the size of the clubs interested and just how many clubs have been linked with him. Being Arsenal, though, big club, all right, not as good as he used to be, but big enough. London club as well. I think Max would probably like that. He's from Luton originally. It's where we got him when he was sort of academy age, along with Jamal Lewis as well, actually. And Adam Eder. For some reason, we just have this thing with Luton players that come to our academy and do fairly well. But yeah, that's 6.5 minutes for you on Max Aarons. If you want anything more, head over to Canary Cast YouTube channel. There's 2 or 3 videos now on Max Aarons. Complete in-depth look at him. Me and Jacob cover just about everything. So if you need anything more on that, head over to Canary Cast. But in the meantime, I'll see you again soon for another transfer rumour with one of our players, no doubt. But yeah, take care. See you soon. Cheers.
Massive thank you there to Jeff for getting involved with the show today and really helping us out there. You can follow them at Cast Canary on Twitter. And as Jack said, please do go over to their YouTube channel and check them out at Canary Cast over there to watch some more in-depth stuff on the likes of Aarons, etc. I'm going to get used to saying Aarons. I must do. I need to get it ingrained in my mind that it's not Max Aarons, it is Max Aarons. So I need to start working on that. And thank you to the person who DM'd me. I should probably give you some credit. To be fair, Andrew on Twitter, who's told me how to pronounce Josh Duich from Hibernian. So thank you. I'm getting educated. I really, really am regarding all of this stuff. So I'm really looking forward to looking at him in tomorrow's show. But going back, of course, to Aaron's, this is the focus of our show. Let's go into some comparisons about the player specifically. And we could compare him to, obviously, 3 other players that I know are hot in the minds of a lot of Arsenal fans right now. Starting off with Emerson, looking at Bellerin, of course, too, as one of our own, and Tariq Lamptey was another one of those players that Arsenal fans would very much like to see. We look at their league statistics, so the Championship for Aaron's, La Liga for Emerson, the Premier League, and the Premier League again for Lamptey and Bellerin. So let's crack on with their heat maps to start things off. The first thing you'd say about Aaron's in comparison to the likes of Bellerin is that he's very much more up and down and closer to that final byline than the Spaniard is in more kind of frequent circumstances. Not as much as you look at with Emerson, but he is more defensive seemingly in the sense of kind of up and down that wing and really cutting back. But I mean, the good news is there is that you see the high intensity patches of that heat map in both ends of the pitch in his own box and going into the opposition box. Aaron's can run for absolute days, and as Jack talked about, he is a consistent player time and time again, a minimum of a 7 out of 10 as he described in every single game minimum, which is an incredible kind of description of a player. Let's go on to their defensive duels, in which he comes out very well with the highest percentage winning of those defensive duels, 62.8%. So despite his lacking in necessarily kind of physicality and height, he is still winning those defensive duels very often. It is the lowest amount at 4.51 that he gets involved with. But when he does get involved in a defensive duel, he does come out the winner. But if you're looking for someone that's a very frequent involver themselves in defensive duels, Emerson at 8.68 is obviously massive, but less win percentage, even though it's only ever so slightly lower. But then you have to drop considerably lower to get the win percentages for Bellerin and for Lamptey. Lamptey is certainly much higher, and Bellerin is higher than Aaron's too, but nowhere near as successful in terms of winning those challenges. If we have a look at aerial duels, we go 2.54 for Aaron's, typically quite a smaller player, and that does show, although he is only the third bottom. Tariq Lamptey is not getting involved with any of these really, and when he does, he's ironically winning more than what Aaron's is. Emerson, as we've expected, is the kind of the more physical of all of these players, and for that reason, you're not surprised to see 3.14 with a 56.2% win rate on those. But if you're going to judge Aaron's on his aerial ability, you're probably digging in the wrong patch to find out what's best about the player. Loose ball duels, we should obviously look at that. He doesn't come out too well in this. He won't get involved in too many of them, just 1.86, because he doesn't win too many of them in comparison to that area. You look at Emerson and Bellerin coming out on top in terms of that area specifically. Interceptions, again, doesn't come out too well in terms of interceptions for a right back, which is mainly because, of course, these guys are very much pinned to the sidelines. They're not involved in the middle of the pitch. Your interception stats are much higher for your centre-backs and for your central midfielders in comparison to players that play more to the touchline and more up and down your wings. So that's not necessarily a concern at this point, but it is something to talk about with Emerson, that he still manages 5.27 interceptions per match, which is very, very good. Going on to the losses that are in their own half. He loses the ball on average in a game 9 times, be that through a bad pass, be that through in possession being lost. He's losing it 41.3% in his own half as well when he does tend to lose it, which is more times than Bellerin, but Bellerin loses it more often in his own half in comparison to the percentages there. Tariq Lamptey loses it more than anyone else on average, and Emerson's losing it more times than Aaron's and Bellerin too. So Bellerin's losing it the least, but you do see him with the highest percentage of those losses in his own half in comparison. Recoveries, though, we see a much better kind of turnaround there in terms of the percentage. 32.7 is the second highest on our list, behind Bellerin for opposition half recoveries, but he has got the lowest number of recoveries in this sense in comparison to someone much more defensive, as we look at, like Emerson, who gets involved in these areas, winning the ball back as much as possible, following down to Tariq Lamptey, but a lower percentage, in the opposition's half regarding those recoveries. But Bellerin definitely comes out better than the young England international, youth international, I should say, in comparison there. Going into kind of the more attacking side of his game and the passing in particular, 43.54 passes per match. He has the same pass accuracy as Bellerin in this area, which is higher than both Emerson and Tariq Lamptey. And he is passing the ball nearly as much as Emerson. It is very close between him and Bellerin as well. Tariq Lamptey definitely coming off worse in regards to his passing stats here. If we look at where those passes are going, passes into the final third, again, he's there as the second highest, joint second highest passing into the final third with 3.41, tied again with Bellerin in regards to frequency, but it is Emerson coming out on top in the frequency side of things. But he does have the second highest accuracy behind Bellerin for those. Bellerin's passing into the final third is definitely kind of the best in regards to this, but it is going to be some of the stats we come on to in a little bit that are going to start to impress you. Passes into the penalty area. This is certainly where he comes out on top. 3.33 is the highest number of passes going into the penalty area per game, and he's got the highest accuracy, which is very impressive to be the highest in both areas. 54% of those passes are reaching their target. So this is for your crosses, your through balls, your passes between the lines, all into the box. Fantastic return in terms of his accuracy and the frequency that he's getting away with here as well. In terms of touches in the penalty area, he's certainly the most offensive of all of the people on our list. 2.13 touches per game in the penalty area. In comparison to the others, he is far and away the greatest offensively on our list. Finally, ending off the statistic comparison with his shooting. As you can see, he does prefer to shoot a lot more than the others on our list because he gets into the box a lot more. As Jack described, he likes to get onto that left foot and take a shot. Sometimes they're not very successful, and others, there actually are. He can get them on target. He scored a couple of goals this season as well, which is positive, but way more offensive than the other players on our list. So I guess it kind of comes down to the type of player that you want to see Arsenal go for. If you want to see Arsenal go for a really offensive right back, then that's certainly Aaron's in a nutshell. If you want to see someone that's going to give you more defensively, then Emerson's probably your man. I fall more towards Emerson's side of things, but don't get me wrong, I would really appreciate Aaron's if we went and got him. I think he's an exceptional right back with an amazing future to develop into, and he's been doing it at Norwich, which shows you that he can do it in the Premier League, and of course he's done it in the Championship and helping them get up to the Premier League, not once but twice. So he's got all of that pedigree in his game, and I really think he's someone that Arsenal, if they went for, I'd be very excited about him being the prospective new right back for Arsenal going forwards. It is going to be tough. I mean, you've seen interest from Bayern Munich, from Barcelona, from Everton, from Spurs, and from West Ham as well, and both Manchester clubs too during his time at the club. So if Arsenal are going to get him, it would be a little bit of a coup considering how much competition there is for his signing. But that rounds off the statistical comparison. We move on to the final section of the show, which of course involves you guys in the chat box, getting your thoughts and feelings regarding Max Aarons in there. So let's have our discussion and let's see what you guys are saying about him for sure. A lot of people are talking about how good Emerson's stats are certainly showing, and we will have a dedicated show to Emerson probably a little bit later down the line because the links have gotten a little bit cooler, let's just say. You also have to think about the fact that he's playing in La Liga, which is somewhere that he's going to have to transition, and those stats are going to be affected by that, which does make it difficult to make straight comparisons in comparison to Lamptey and Aarons. But defensively, he certainly is the one that comes out on top. But offensively, Aarons is definitely the winner in that regard. VM says, Aarons is still so young, and I feel he could develop well with us. More creative outlets as well are very much needed. Omar says this would be a very smart signing for us. Hamza says, Aarons is ready to do the errands. I see myself out. Iron Cub says, Lamptey plays in Brighton in the Premier League, whereas Aarons plays by far the strongest team in the Championship, which is something to consider. But he has played in the Premier League, and that is where a lot of interest came from him when he played in the Premier League with Norwich in that last season's team. So that is something to think about, yes. But actually, the Championship is a very, very competitive league. It's a very difficult league to get out of, and not many teams who get relegated go straight back up like we've seen with Watford and Norwich this season. So don't let that take it away from you, especially for that type of player in that position for a right back. I really, really wouldn't. There is going to be obviously difficulties in transition as always, but for a right back to be putting on those types of stats, I think is really impressive. JD says, think Arteta wants his fullbacks to be the main attacking threat down the wings next season with two CDMs protecting those centre-backs. Then Aarons would be the better choice. Iron Cub says, I would be fine with either Aarons or Lamptey because I think the homegrown factor definitely helps, especially if we get rid of some people like Nelson on Nketiah and Willock. Matt G says he's been linked with some of the top teams across Europe. Do we have a chance in signing him? Well, as Jack said at the start, yes, we probably do, but you're going to have to stump the money up. If you want him, you have to pay the money. It's as simple as that. And you're looking at a figure around £30 million if you want to get this deal done. Manu says, can he do the Cancelo type role? His heat map shows he likes to hug the sideline a lot, so I would say no. Yes, but I mean, the Cancelo type role is not something that I'd be looking prospectively and going, we need to sign someone that can do that. That's very much akin to Pep Guardiola's tactics. I want our right backs to be our right back, not necessarily mirroring the tactics being used by Cancelo, despite how good, of course, the Portuguese man has been. As Raf says, either Max Aarons or Emerson would be great for Arsenal and are an upgrade on Bellerin, and these stats have definitely proven that. Temi says, Tom, can we take a look at Aina from Fulham? He is a robust backup, especially if Arteta doesn't fancy Cedric. If we get linked to a player, Temi, we certainly will. So fingers crossed for you that we get linked to the guy. Ayan says, not Aarons, Ashraf, Hakimi and Emerson as backup. We need money. I mean, not Aarons is interesting. Ashraf Hakimi is going to cost you a hell of a lot, and I doubt it's going to happen. But Emerson is certainly someone that is not even necessarily a backup for me in comparison to Hakimi. I think he's got the defensive side of his game that he matches up in regards to how good of a signing he would be. Javier says, Tom, we need to sign the Norwich trio of Buendia, Aarons and Cantwell as well. I don't know how well Cantwell's actually been getting on this season. I've not really looked too much into him, so that's why maybe to park for the moment. Gogo says, off topic, Rangers just went the whole season unbeaten. That makes Gerrard a good prospect for the Arsenal job. Maybe so. Archie says, I'd like to see us sign a tall, strong right back instead of an Aarons or Bellerin type like Chambers. So Emerson is probably the type that you would probably go for. As Raf says, are you going to do a tactical breakdown on Ryan Bertrand? It is in the works. There's a lot of on the list that we've got to try and get through. We will definitely try and get to them. Ty says that he likes Matty Cash. Have we seen any links with him so far? No, we haven't, and I imagine that's because he's pretty close, as far as I'm aware, to signing maybe even a new contract, despite even signing just a year ago. And he would cost a hell of a lot of money to sign from another Premier League club. What about Frimpong from Celtic? He is actually no longer with Celtic. They sold him in January to Bayer Leverkusen. So he's probably very much unavailable now, having signed for a new club just 6 months ago. But he was someone I was talking about last summer, saying that maybe we should be looking at someone like Jeremy Frimpong to bring him in, because he could turn into a very good player and arguably knocking on the door of the Dutch national team very soon as well. But he's off and has been off to Bayer Leverkusen for some time. So make sure you keep your eye on how he gets on in the Bundesliga. Avery says, while Emerson's stats are slightly better, there is not a large enough difference between him and Aarons is Prem proven. So Aarons over Emerson for me. Alex Jones says, Cantwell hasn't been great for Norwich. I think Emerson is the ideal signing, to be honest, in terms of a right back. Matty Cash is good, but why would he leave Villa? So there you go. Said says, is there a tactical breakdown on Emerson? It's in the works, mates. Don't you worry. The links that have come out today is that we have very much called our interest on him. Aarons is higher up on our list of targets. It probably comes down to the fact that Emerson's a very difficult deal to do because of the situation with Barcelona, who have a joint ownership with him and can sign him for €9 million if they want to, and then would have to sell him on, which does complicate things. Whereas Aarons, obviously, you just steal him straight from Norwich, so it's a much more simpler process. Okay, we are going to wrap up there. So thank you ever so much. If you can drop a like on the video and show your appreciation for the consistent work that we are putting out on the channel, I would much appreciate it. And of course, if you have enjoyed the content and you are new here, if you would like to subscribe and get all of that content, we would definitely encourage you to do so. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for your next transfer update every single day, all the way through until the end of the transfer window. I'm going on a holiday at some point, so I'm going to have to try and do this from San Sebastian. Is that going to work? We'll see. I don't know how much of a commitment, and the missus might kill me, but I've done it before, so we'll probably see what happens. But we're going to try and do it every single day moving forwards to the end of the transfer window. We'll see what happens. Absolute pleasure, as always, speaking to you guys. So if you could drop a like at the video, I'd really appreciate it. But we'll be back very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.